Hello, I'm on my way to Taksim, but I noticed just before I set out that my tousi, my friend in London, has met up with Douglas Murray, and he's showing off the book about the death cults and democracy. I read both the democracy book and the Strange Death of Europe on the same day. Douglas Murray is a phenomenal writer. He is just a racy read, but I'm afraid, as I said earlier, I think it's all piffle. But as a non-Jewish writer writing about defending Israel, I think that's quite impressive. And what's important is to recognize that he doesn't quite give all the context. He records the Hamas brutality in October quite brilliantly, as also the anti-Semitic backlash across the West and particularly the liberal West, and the simplicity of that response. He also suggests that the Islamic extremism goes back to the 1979 Iranian Revolution. I think it goes back further than that, but certainly the 1979 Revolution and Ayatollah Khomeini introduces the world to this strange brand of belief that encompasses suicide bombings, and particularly the 13-year-old Mohammed Hossein Fahmidi, who Douglas Murray, I think, doesn't talk about, unless I failed to read thoroughly enough. He died in 1980 in the Iran-Iraq War, but so much of the hatred that has been set up in things like Mein Kampf and the Protocols of the Elder of Zion, books which are available not only, as Douglas Murray says, in Egypt, but also in Greece. I remember going across the square from the main cathedral in Athens and finding these books on display in the cathedral bookshop. I was really quite shocked. But and you've got the stuff that Yasser Arafat was saying in the early 1960s about the liberation of the occupied territories. What he means is the eradication of Israel itself. And from that point of view, Douglas Murray is right to speak out, but I wish he would speak out with a little bit more awareness of the misery that the Palestinians suffer, particularly in the occupied territories in the West Bank and particularly in Gaza. And the fact that he doesn't is a big hole in his assessment. Now, as I said, I've read his books. I've read them with the recent books. Though they're not that recent. One of them was written in 2017. But I've read them with some speed and some enjoyment. But I am, broadly speaking, dismissive of their scholarship and of some of the message which is there. We need that message because we need to be able to say Israel has a right to survive, Israel has a right to exist, Israel has a right to defend itself. What we also need to say, absolutely, and to hold the two things in equally in both hands, is to say that Palestine and the Palestinians have a right to survive. Nobody it is abhorrent to punish that collective punishment that Israel is throwing at the Palestinians in Gaza is abhorrent and must be condemned. And the enthusiasm with which Netanyahu is pursuing this process of eradication to appease his far-right base is something, again, that needs to be called out and resisted. And the fact that one's calling it out doesn't make one anti-Israeli. The fact that one's defending the right of Israel to self-defense doesn't make one anti-Palestinian. What it makes is one pro-human being, and I think it makes it. I think what we need is a book that makes it clear that this sort of belligerence is something that needs to be resisted, whether it's in Palestine, in Gaza, in Israel, or indeed in Ukraine or Georgia, and committed by people like Putin and the Kremlin. But social media, and particularly YouTube, makes the assumption that you're either on one side or another, and if you're saying stuff in favor of this group, you must be against that group, and it simply isn't true.